So in those years, many years, it was my 13-year anniversary yesterday of running my studio. Isn't that exciting? We've made loads of games. We made Tiny Dice Dungeon a very long time ago, and it did pretty well for us. I think it's probably the thing that secured like our studio surviving. We did some games that did really shit, like Legend of Evil. There it is. No one's heard of it. It didn't sell anything. That's why. And then we made that game that I think probably secured our future and the rest of our lives, which is wonderful. And now we're making this game, which is, we'll talk about that later. Scope, right? What is scope? Obviously, it's the amount of stuff that you plan to put in your game when you start making your game. And to do schedules and to do costing and all that kind of stuff, you need to know what's going to be in your game. It's weird, I don't have a screen, so I have to sort of look over my shoulder because I only made the deck last night, so I don't know what it says. Maybe I could do the thing sitting down, looking back at it. I could join you all. When I think about like what makes an incredible game, it's like what are the things that we focus on that make it really interesting. But I think a lot of the time we get lost in the details, as is listed here as a ridiculous example. And we think that, trying to make something that is so real and so deep, and every time you add something to the game, it's going to make it better. So, what if Sonic wants to take off his shoes and massage his feet after he's been running for a long time? Things like that. And people start exploring this kind of like endless level of depth. And we all think that that is what makes the best game. So I got some case studies from my history, things that made me who I am today. So I can't believe I'm doing this, but we're going into the terror of some really bad old games. So I worked on this, Biker Mice from Mars on the Nintendo DS. There it is. How many people in this room have ever seen a Nintendo DS? That's pretty good. Even the old one, the original one. Yay! It's really old now. It makes me feel really old to think that it's really old. But there you go. That was like the first ever touchscreen thing. And it was like before the iPhone and stuff. We were like breaking barriers, making touchscreen games. Anyway, that's not the point. Let's talk a little bit about scope and what this game was. Obviously, we had to pitch it to the animation company or whoever owned the IP. Biker Mice, right? They go on bikes. You can't not have that, right? So we did like a racing game pitch. It's like gonna have driving in it. It's got to. And because we all love Mario Kart, you could like shoot rockets, and there were things in the road you had to avoid, and you had to overtake people and win the race. As you can see from these screenshots, you could barely ever see anyone in the race. That was carefully selected to have two enemies. Most of the time the track was empty, but there you go. But that's not a game, is it? Because Biker Mice episodes, they run around and fight people and stuff. So we needed all that stuff too. So you could see we had a turret that you could use. We had a boss battle down here. We had the arbitrary train level where you're sort of fighting on top of a train like Gunstar Heroes. Super cool. So here you go. Here's the credits. It's brilliant. Look at that. My name at the top and my name all over it. It's great, isn't it? I think as a producer, I probably learnt something on this project, which is what we're going to go into. Once I cross out the people that didn't do anything on dev, we got less people. Once I cross out the people whose names are repeated, there's a great story here, because I realize I've got longer than I anticipated, so I can tell a good story. You see Martin there as Martine. So Martin and I didn't get on. He was an artist. And I was writing out the credits, and I accidentally named him Martine, which is a lady's name. So after the game shipped, he came up to me and threatened me violently, even though I wrote his name correctly somewhere else in the credits. And we got in the lift one day, and it was like school. He said, "We're off the office property now, mate. You're going to get it." Because I wrote his name as Martine. And my boss was there, and he was very confused and very entertained. Anyway, so there we go. We've got 3 programmers and 10 artists to make our incredible game. It's going to be the best. But let's look at how long we had. I didn't really think this through, as you can see. We had 4 months. So after consulting ChatGPT on the average working days in 4 months, and taking off 1 month for our submission and bug fixing, we had 55 days for 3 engineers. And let's look at what those engineers were doing. Florian, it was his birthday yesterday. No one cares about that either, do they? But there you go. He was in charge of the entirety of the side-scrolling mode, which to him and I was going to be Gunstar Heroes, but better. So there you go. And then Crispian was doing the racing game all on his own, and Tom was doing the UI. And I think this was the first DS game we made, so we'd never even done the touchscreen hardware before. So 55 days each for that. Sounds great, doesn't it? Sounds very feasible. So how do you think it did? You know, let's see. Obviously, I was very excited. I thought it was going to do incredibly well because I was a little kid, and I think I had all the hope and dreams. So did the rat man, whoever he is. I don't know his name. I should. I made a game at one point. I would have known his name. But yeah, how do you think it did? Anyone? Any votes? Out of 10. Oh, it's going to be good. There we go. Look at that. Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, Jack de Vries, if that's how you pronounce it, he was not the only person who thought ill of the game. Many people thought ill of the game. Because I don't have forever to talk about these games, I'm not covering Rock'em Sock'em Robots on the GBA, which is the worst rated ever Game Boy Advance game. I'm very proud that I worked on that. But that doesn't come into this talk. So really the point in this talk is to talk about like the experiences I went through and the things that I learned and the things that I now apply to game development from these events, right? So yeah, you'll never have enough time. I think we started off really hopeful, and obviously that time expired very quickly. So now whenever I make a game, I'm like, day one, go for it! You know, you got to just like step in and assume that your crazy ideas that you're going to have at the end aren't going to make it into the game, and you should really focus on what's important. So, case study number 2. It is War Devil, an amazing AAA video game. It's obviously on the front cover of Edge magazine. Who has heard of War Devil? Wow, that's shocking for a cover story of Edge, you know, shocking. So they had, in like 2001 or something, this amazing engine that ran at 1080. Could you imagine an engine that runs at 1080? So they got me down for an interview, and I was going to be the producer on the project. It was huge budget. They had like Pinewood Studios, you know, where they make Star Wars. They had a whole building there. They had a motion capture suite in the basement that was one of only 3 in the whole country that was equipped to do such large motion capture states. So yeah, it was a huge deal. In the interview, he asked me, how do you think we did this? This is from the original Xbox, these screenshots, right? So it probably is the best looking thing ever on the original Xbox. And I said, is it a unique texture for every single surface with the shadow baked into it? And he said, no, it's something else. And then on my first day, I discovered it was a unique texture on every surface with the shadow baked into it. So there you go. Outside those walls, there was nothing. Like the entire texture memory was used to make these tiny areas. So I was a producer, and I've written down somewhere how many people I think there were, but I think there were like, 80 people or something in the studio. What the kind of creative director, founder guy did, I think he employed me because he thought I came from handheld and wouldn't be like a pain in the ass. But he basically had no script because there was a movie. There was supposed to be a movie as well. He had no script. He had no game design document. And he was just sort of languishing in that creative space that we all love to be in. You know, there's nothing better than thinking of your story and thinking of, wouldn't it be cool if the character could double jump and then they got a special power and they could triple jump? You know, rather than actually having a playable version of that, it was just sort of all in the guy's mind, you know. So yeah, beautiful creativity. The reason I have a picture of a rock is because one day I went in and I was tasked with talking to the concept team. And the task they had to do was concept how a rock meets the ground. So they spent a week drawing rocks intersecting with ground. And I said to the guy, I said, well, can't we just go outside and look at like a rock on the floor? He's like, no, we need to explore everything. Absolute perfection. So yeah, this was a team layout. We had 30 concept artists, 30 modelers, 20 animators, I'm guessing, but it was a big team. And look at it, it looks fancy, look at that. There's a great bit about the team size which made me laugh a lot on my first day, which is we had one programmer. He wasn't even in the studio. And I was like, what's going on, So amazing. I got fired from that job too. I've been fired from 2 jobs. So this one I was fired from because I was very upset and I was pushing very hard to try to fix it. Only the righteous will survive. I didn't notice that. Well, I think we can all guess what happened to them. So this is just an anecdote from like how badly it was run. The investors, Ignition Entertainment, said, you better give us a playable demo. And the creative director was like, I think we won't tell them that we're not going to, and we'll just give them a trailer when it comes to it. And they wanted a huge playable space, and he made a trailer using real-time assets in like 2 weeks where he just built it in a small square. And the thing was, his game was never bigger than anything. It was always just ridiculous. And I remember talking about Gears of War. I said, there's this game coming out, Gears of War, it looks great. And he goes, nothing compared to what we're going to make, James. I was like, oh, wow, cool. So yeah, as you can see, cancelled. That's quite a lot of years, like 8 years on a game. And I love this little line, the game has never reached a playable stage once. Pretty cool. And the guy confirms he was the only coder just down here. They tried to sue people who said bad things about this game. So I don't know, maybe they'll sue me for talking about the game, but who cares? It's a long time ago. So what did I learn from this? Really, it was the worst example, and I've seen countless examples of this in my career, of people really exploring the concept phase for concept, not for actually thinking about how you build the product, Like, to me, the idea of like that bit ideation moment is all about making sure your mechanics are going to work, A friend of mine who I work with at LucasArts, like he was my creative director for a while. And I remember saying to him, I was trying to remake, we were trying to reboot X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. And he said, James, you're not allowed to think about what planet anything is on. I was like, but I just want a setting. And he's like, no, you got to make the game fun first. You got to fix the mechanics. And I sort of stand by that for my whole life now because I've seen examples of it where people come up with a mechanic and then they cling on to it. They come up with, some story element and they cling on to it. And then it sort of steers the game rather than the game steering itself. A great example of that is the dog in Fable 3, I think it is. Peter Molyneux was really into the dog, apparently, and no one wanted the dog. In the end, the dog was great, but the amount of pain the dog caused them because he'd set his heart on the dog being in the game. So, number 3. Is this interesting? Me slagging off everybody in my life? It's great. I could do this for hours. There's hundreds of these I could do, but we're only going to get 3, I'm afraid. So, who played this game? Oh shit, I put the Force Unleashed 1 on the screenshot. It's supposed to be 2. I'm being mean about the wrong game. We're talking about 2 here, just to be very clear, not number 1. I think that's number 1, yeah. Sorry, number 1. So, this isn't on the internet. Look at me, I'm talking about all kinds of shit I shouldn't. Oh, he's taking a photograph. So, this man, who knows who this man is? Anyone? Corey. Let's leave it at that. Let's not list his surname. No, we don't need to do that. People will know who we're talking about. His t-shirt, Norse something, might give it away, like what he's famous for. So after working for Sony, he came to be the creative director of LucasArts for a short period. He led the design of The Force Unleashed 2 for 2 years or more. Our president at the time, basically had his yearly meeting. His originally, George Lucas has said, why are we not like this game and that game? These huge creative masterpieces. He would say, I want to be like, BioShock or whatever. Why don't we have a Star Wars BioShock? So we had the remit to just go crazy, dream, And then one year he went for his yearly meeting, and then the accountant said, you best start making some money. It's getting a bit bad. So he went back to the office and said, we got a year and a bit to ship this game because we've been messing around for 2 years and there's nothing yet. Going back to my previous examples of people running out of time and thinking the creative experience is the great bit. What he was making was really cool. It was really good, but wasn't going to get made in the time. He said, screw you, I'm not doing that. Give me my time that you promised me when I took the job. And they said, no, finish the game. So he quit. We had something like 18 months. It may have been less, I don't know. But the official story, if ever you read about the game, is that it was done in like 18 months. It was not. It was done in like 3.5 years. But they pissed away the first 2 years, so there you go. Obviously, what the first thing they did was they threw away everything that they designed, that Corey had designed, partially because he wasn't there anymore. Went back to the old game they knew and understood, and basically pulled the engine out of carbon freeze, or whatever Star Wars terminology they'd like to use, and then tried to design this game very quickly. This, for example, Dagobah, is if you've ever played the game, you get off your ship, you walk through a little bit of trees, and let's look at those trees in a bit more detail that aren't really finished. And you go in and you see Yoda, and he talks to you in a cutscene that was made by those people who do like Love, Death and Robots. So we paid someone a fortune to make the cutscene because we didn't have time. And this was actually just an art high bar. This was an area used just to show what kind of art quality we were going to have in the game. It was never really supposed to be a level. No one designed it. Shit! We need to say that we got at least 6 levels in the game. Throw that art thing in there. That's kind of what happened. There was a design for more stuff, but obviously it all got cut. There's a sort of hole in the top right as well, which I enjoy. Anyway, so what they actually did, even though I sound like I'm being mean about it, actually it was pretty sensible. They went back to technology they understood. They wrote a really simple story that they could cut bits out of. They made everything very optimal. I think, in general, they scoped it correctly. They did a good job on scope. But they did some things that were weird. Obviously, the game itself was considered too short, didn't have enough content, all kinds of problems with it, really, in the reviews. If we'd have spent every second making content, we might have been able to get better reviews. But I'm here to talk about this door. This door here. Looks like a door, right? Can you imagine what is behind that door? You can't go through the door. Bear in mind, the door never opens in the game. Anyone got any ideas what's behind the door? Another door. So I remember being in the meeting with the creative director. I was a lead designer on this project. The thing I have to explain to people regularly if they say, look, you worked as lead designer. I'm like, oh, shit. So he had a couple of really crazy things. He was all like, you have to feel like a Jedi. And I get that. You have these statements by which you live through the game, right? Games, it's great to have a sentence that you can go back to and summarize what it was you were trying to achieve when you started making that game. So, be a Jedi. Jedis are all powerful or whatever, right? These doors, he was like, but a Jedi can just open a door. And it was like, I guess. He's like, well, we need to put bigger doors in front of the doors. So, and he was really obsessed by it. And it's one of the points where I had an argument with him. I was like, but they're just doors in front of doors. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? But I think at one point, the door that is behind that door, you get to open it with a mini game. And that's what pissed him off, right? And I kind of get it, but it doesn't really matter. So the art team spent a month making doors to go on the front of other doors, which is fantastic. Another discussion I had with him, which is, so we'd built these, well, not me actually, the mechanics team had built these cool mechanics where it was difficult to fight, right? And it was there was some actual strategy and tactics involved. However, he wanted you just to be able to throw your lightsabers and cut people's heads off, which I completely agree with. It's awesome, and I love it, right? And he's like, that's what Jedis do, and they can throw people around and kill them instantly. And I said, I agree with this, but we spent all this time, we spent 6 months on these mechanics for combat. Every single person who plays this game is not going to do any of that stuff we spent time doing. They're just going to come in and throw the lightsaber and cut everyone's heads off over and over again because it's really fun. And he's like, people, James, will try to play the game in a way that suits them. They won't always take the path of least resistance. The hardcore players will go in and play it properly. It's like, well, they won't because there's no incentive in the game for you to do it the hard way. There's zero incentive. And he obviously, creative director, he got to tell me what to do. So it was just another example of a huge amount of time that we threw into the trash. So yeah, didn't do great. Yeah, I make really good games, me. So that, with that, and it was, a thing that I've seen many, many other times. Another thing about like scope is like the things that you're building, the things you're working on, are they actually something that people are going to see on screen and like really heavily interact with? Are they something that's like really core to the game? And I think that it's very easy to get lost in tiny little details that kind of mean nothing really, to the end player, the end user. It's like there are features I've seen cut from games that felt so imperatively central to the game, and when it comes out, no one knew it was going to be there, and it's not there, and no one even says anything, So trying to constantly reflect upon how the user's going to see your game, what difference is the change you're making going to say to make to the end user who's playing the game. I think it's important to constantly reflect upon that and think about the value you're bringing, and it's not just your own crazy little rabbit hole. So, I don't know how long I've talked for. What time is it? Does anyone know? Huh? 3:22. Okay, cool. Because I thought I was going to do a half-hour talk, and now it's an hour, so I made more slides. 13 years ago, I got fired from LucasArts. Pretty proud of that. We were doing something that I think was pretty wild. We were making a sequel to Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, and it was sort of going pretty wildly. But that's another story. So I started my studio, and I tried to take all the things I had learnt through my journeys of making games for like EA and people like that. And I thought, how can I make games as an individual developer that I can actually finish and ship and maybe do something, Obviously, I assumed that my studio was going to last like 5 seconds and I'd have to get a job again. But I'd felt really frustrated by management, which is what resulted in me getting fired from the 2 jobs I was fired from. And I thought, maybe if I feel so cocky and so sure enough that I can constantly give management a hard time, maybe I could do it. Maybe, So the jury's still out on whether or not I can. But yeah, so simple game, 1 mechanic, 6 weeks, made another one straight after that, 8 weeks. Did either of them do well? I mean, they both got like press, which was wild for a mobile game. But no, they sold nothing. And 8 weeks I felt was too long. So then I made this game, which we then ported to the 3DS and the Switch and stuff. But yeah, it sold nothing on every platform that we did it in. But the idea was like, how can I make a game that I can make really fast in like 4 days or something? And obviously it took 2 weeks. And then this game, I wanted to make it in 24 hours. And I finished it in about, I finished the main loop in 24 hours. And then I shipped it within a week. But they're all shit games, continuing the theme of the, the previous set of slides. So I think I had to get like a part-time job teaching and stuff, and games was sort of starting to become almost like secondary, and it was a bit scary, and I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I guess I should go back and get a job in the industry. Not that teaching is not a valid job for anyone who's a teacher. Wouldn't dare dismiss teaching. But yeah, for me, making games is what I want to do. So I made this demo. I sort of played a bunch of games on the App Store and things I didn't like, and I looked at the way they monetized and all that kind of stuff, and I thought, well, maybe I can compromise a little bit and still make something I'm really proud of. So in this game, the dice in the bottom corner, you'd expect the dice to like roll, right? But I just slap frames on top of each other, really, really ugly, and kind of enough to induce epilepsy, I think. And then the characters, you kind of, when they strike and stuff or move around, you'd sort of want them to have a walk cycle or some sort of animation. Everything just slides around. It's really rubbish. It's really crap. But you know what? No one cared. It was great. Because the game was fun. It was a fun game. Apparently, if all the people who still write to me and say they love it are to be believed. Unless we made them all crazy or something. So, yeah, I mean, look at those amazing boss sprites. I drew those monsters and we just scaled them up to like 20x rather than actually redrawing them at the correct pixel scale, which hurts me deeply inside to look at, but there you go. Yeah, the game did super well, despite being like really, really simple and not having much stuff in, and I think now I couldn't make this game. I'm too broken. Now I'd be like, they've got to animate. They've got to, and then I'd spend ages more doing it. So I guess like through my lessons in scope and the way I think about scope, that's always been really important to the studio. So I've got a list of all the games that we've made. It's quite long. So it's a battle of scope. Who will win the battle of scope, us or scope? So in our 13 years, we've made these things. Some of them got cancelled. This one down here, War Game Asterisk, which maybe we'll go back and make. We got signed to Congregate to make that, and when we sort of fucked it up and didn't finish it. So Scope wins that one. I screwed it up. They even said to me, James, why is there a massive submarine when the game is about war? And I was like, because the submarine looks cool. And I think basically there's a pattern here. We did Tiny Dice Dungeon, and then I fucked this up by doing stupid things because we had some money. Well, you'll understand the theme. And I also did The Last Vikings with that Dungeons money. And The Last Vikings was sort of over scope, but we spent all the money and we nearly went out of business, so we had to release that game before it was even finished. And then I learned my lesson and went back to scope again. Keeps on going. Oh, look at there's a 3D one that never came out. But I sort of did that at home in my free time. It's going. Oh, so it keeps on saying 21 underneath while the graphics load. I didn't think you'd be able to see the number 21, so I didn't bother changing it. Look, 21, but it's more than that. 27, look at that. So yeah, I would say that thinking about scope allowed us to make loads of games in a very short amount of time. So yeah, we won. Look at that. Aren't we great? So I always wanted to make bigger games rather than start off with like a dream game of like, I'm going to make Let's Build a Dungeon as an example of a large game. Every game would have a sort of feature of something bigger that I wanted to make. So we wanted to make this game called Pixona. It was a little bit like Terraria, I guess. And as a result, every time that I made a game, I was like, how could this mechanic or this system that I'm going to code slot into that game? So we still have code from our very first game that runs inside Let's Build a Dungeon. It's still there. Like lines from Tiny Dice are running inside dungeons. So over the years, it's been great. I also think it's natural for us, as we've touched on a couple of times, to want to make things that are complicated. It's I think in design, rather than solve the problem of why something isn't fun, it's a lot easier to just slap more shit on top of it. Like, yeah, let's just put more stuff on. It's going to be great. I've seen that so many times. And even me, sometimes I'm like, I don't know how to solve that problem. I'll just put something else on there. Obviously very, very bad, right? So bigger games don't mean success. And I think the industry now more than ever is proving that, you know? I think we have these like really simple games that are huge, right? And I think depending on how good you are at programming, these games could all be like at least prototyped out and made to some level of okayness in a month or so. You know, I think Whole, whatever it's called, is famed for like taking 2 months or something, right? So as a studio starting up or as a, first kind of games, like look to these as your inspiration. Stop thinking about Final Fantasy or whatever it is that you really want to make, And obviously we're seeing games like Repo. And Repo, like the guys who made that, they were about to go out of business, right? They'd spent like 7 years making their last game, I think something like that. And then they're like, let's just make something really quick so we can just make one last thing. And because they made something simple and accessible, it became a massive hit, If they'd had a hit with their first game, they probably would have made something else massive, and they would have never had the super hit that was Repo. Okay, we're closing in. It's time for Let's Build a Zoo. There's a trailer, I think. Maybe. Do I have to click again? It plays. Oh, look at that. I do. Is it going to be really loud? Look at those pixels all blurry and stuff. They look great. There's a truck sound. There's a song, which is very similar, but not that similar to a Who song. I did not steal it from the Who. I sort of did, but I didn't really. But yes, so I guess I can talk about this trailer and why it succeeded. When we signed the game, we sent off a bunch of documents about the game, and everyone rejected the game. Then I sent a pitch document and one very short video. And in that video, I said, look at all the people on the screen in the video. And I sort of had this, basically. And once I had this little image that I sent to people, everyone wanted to sign the game, you know? So I'd found this core that was really appealing to publishers, and you could obviously imagine selling the game off that. Here's the kind of dark world that we never did. Let's not talk about that. So obviously, we had no money, you know? So we managed to make Let's Build a Zoo with 5 people, which is quite wild to me, even now when I look at it. What had happened was I'd gone to meet Apple and talk about our previous games, which was Tiny Decks and Dungeons and Prison Planet. And we were making, at this point, like no money from these games. We were getting massive features from Apple and Google. And the guy from Apple said, why don't you reskin Prison Planet as like a zoo game? And I went back to the office and said, we could reskin it as a zoo game. So we sort of started doing that, and then we were just too depressed. Mobile games are, for us, I think they took a lot of our soul away. Trying to make games that like milk people and abuse them is very depressing. So yeah, we sort of stopped really, and thank goodness we did. It was a wonderful thing. We were basically about to run out of money. It was just like the business of mobile games was just like, I just looked back across the last 5 or 6 games we'd released, and just the revenue was constantly less and less. And the game Tiny Decks and Dungeons, we had like a 50-cent ARPU, and that felt really good because Tiny Dice Dungeon had 50-cent ARPU, and we made millions of dollars off that game. And this one, I went to people and said, 50 cents, come on. And they're like, can't do anything. You got to all do user acquisition. And at that point, the cheapest we could expect for user acquisition was going to be $2. And I think by now it's got crazy. It's way more than that now. And this was like only like 4 years ago. So yeah, if you're thinking of making mobile games, don't. There you go. So one of the things that we did to like utilize our scope in the game was I built a bunch of mechanics at the very beginning. I spent like a week on this and realized it was wrong. So we would have things like privacy for the animals, and different things would happen, like they would be sad because they didn't eat enough, or too many people making noise around them, or people taking photographs, and really complicated stuff that all interacted to mean that the animal wouldn't want to have a baby or it wouldn't want to eat food. And I was like, this is so cool. It's like real life. But the problem was when you played the game, nobody could tell what was happening. Nobody could see that stuff on the screen, right? And I'm thinking back to the past, thinking back to the doors of Cato Nemoidia. And really I thought, well, you know, the best thing to make it clear that we've put some work in here is to put it on the screen. So we actually started making user interface around all the features so that people could understand them. The simulation became very transparent, very clear, and it made everyone like really happy. And I think the whole kind of let's be really smart about the simulation thing left me very quickly. Also, this is a very specific simulation game thing. I kind of come to this realization that with simulation games, people take a lot of comfort in knowing that they can go really deep in and see every single element of the simulation. Do they ever need to use it? No. I think they just take this like warmth in them. Like 1 in 1,000 people probably actually goes in and tunes what food they give to their rabbit, right? But the fact you can do it is what makes it really exciting. So it doesn't really make much difference if you adjust the food on your rabbit. Sorry if anyone adjusted the food on their rabbit if they played the game. I think it gets you like a better score that is also probably meaningless. Didn't tell you this. The publisher wanted us to cut the farming and the factory stuff, but to me that was such a huge, wide bit of the game that it gave a huge amount of benefit back to users, so I left it in. And we pushed for it, so we worked really hard to get that in, and I think it was the right choice. I don't know why this slide is here. I guess because I was making this deck at 2 a.m. I think when the launch came, I think we did suffer burnout in the company. Basically, out of those 5 people, only one of them, well, except me, so 2 of us stayed. Everyone else left. Really sad. And I think the problem was that we'd like pushed so hard, and it wasn't about like working loads of hours, because we weren't. It was more about like the emotional, like, oh God, if this doesn't work, we're going to die, right? And I think everyone was just so emotionally tired. After it came out and the game was successful, it's like, oh, I need a break. And it was really sad, you know, because they left. So I think that was something I learned about how to balance your team a little bit better as you kind of work through. Obviously, the game did really well. Yay, look at that. We made some money. So this is the last section of the talk. Obviously, looking at the previous examples of what happened when we made money, I'd like to think that I'd learned a lesson. So what is feature creep? Obviously, the gradual, often unplanned addition of new features that expand a project's scope beyond its original plan, leading to delays, complexity, and burnout. So, and I also decided to start telling people, rightly or wrongly, that Let's Build a Dungeon is going to be my last ever game, you know, like, because I'm sort of want to not feel consistent anxiety like I have for the last 13 years. So I set myself this goal that after this game, I shall just sort of I'll live on my like paradise island, and I'll like use like Zoom, and I'll call in and go, let's make a game about wizards. And then I'll just go back to like drinking cocktails, and 2 weeks later the game about wizards will be made. That's what I dream of. It's obviously not going to happen, but nonetheless, I've still convinced myself that this is my last major product. So yeah, I'm still making other things already, but I don't talk about that. Here's there was going to be a trailer for the game. There's no trailer. Maybe it's at the end of this. I don't know. So has anyone heard of our game? Yeah, 2 people nodding. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to make basically Let's Build a Zoo, because that did so well and I really loved it. I wanted to make a sort of dungeon-themed version, but instead of them being like warriors and stuff, you're making an MMORPG, and these people come in and sort of play the game, right? And then you kind of adjust and rebalance the game to make them happy. But that's not enough, no. I wanted it to be a full simulation of a video game studio and every single thing that goes into that. So you kind of manage the back end on Steam and do all kinds of stuff. You do negotiations. We actually have a full simulation of things like the Nintendo back end, which we're not supposed to have, but we do all that stuff. And then better yet, you can play the game. So it's sort of 3 games already, which is really stupid. And then we wanted mod support. So we have this like way of you importing stuff, writing text files, all that kind of stuff. So after Let's Build a Zoo came out, we were going to make a simple game. And everyone's like, reskin, Let's Build a Zoo. And I was like, don't want to. And then people started writing to us, and I wrote back with this pitch. And to be honest, it was like 5 pages. It wasn't even as good as the pitch I just gave you. And I put a really big price tag next to it. And then people started writing back and saying yes. And I was like, what's going on? Going to make this stupid thing. Obviously, it seemed like it had a reasonable scope. So we set it to be 1.5 years. Oh, there's a trailer. Look at that. There's some music. That's not in the game. And you rent your office, look, and where it is, it impacts the price of staff. And if you rent an office that's far from the MRT or the train, they take longer to get to work. And yay, fire people. We're replacing all this art's gone now. We have a concept artist who drew it all. Because yeah, he's AI. That's real though. Anyway, look at that. Build stuff, place towers, and you know it's almost a tower defense game. Make choices. So we have like all the different like classes, fishing and all that stuff. There you go. It's everything to everybody in the trailer. I think it's nearly finished. Yeah, King Perplex. Look, he's on my shirt. Real merchandise. Oh, and there's our simulation of Steam. Look at that. Yeah, we kind of went a bit crazy. Let's make a hit. Yay. So yes, we ended up signing with Kowloon on a schedule for 1.5 years. Kowloon are obviously funder. They're not a publisher. So we had to still self-publish a game and handle all of our own marketing. 1.5 years, obviously very feasible. As you can imagine, because we had quite a bit of money in our bank, and because I decided that this was going to be my last game, and Kowloon didn't really give us a hard time. They're just like, just do what you need to do. We're easy. Things went great. Nothing's gone wrong at all. It's all good. So I wanted the mods to all be done using text files, and the kids would like kind of open up text file, really simple to do. But imagine if we had tools, like a sort of game engine thing. I just can't imagine it. So we made an AI editor Then we made a pixel art editor, and it automatically animates the characters for you. And it's like a full animation suite. We made a non-linear conversation editor that has logic gates in it that link to the other things in the game. We've even made a screen flow system that allows you to animate screens, create buttons, make whatever you want. So it's like a full game flow system. And there's logic in that, right? So when you end a level, you can like pick what screen you go to based on the things the player did. We have triggers, volumes, terraforming. We have, on the desktop area, we have things like that. Obviously, our Steam simulation is pretty ridiculous. Some of these games on the left, you can actually play. Because, why not? Let's take some of the games that I never released and stick them in here because, the game's not already big enough. There's a web browser with loads of websites. There's an event calendar that's based on the real-world video game events. This is the quest editor that goes from a quest tree into the actual quest system itself. There's a whole structuring of your work and employees and making them do stuff like Trello, but it's not Trello. It's legally distinct from Trello. Your org chart. You've even got Napster that you can download music. It's crazy. There's a weapon editor, and you can make guns, swords, shields. You can do deflections. You can do all the things. You got your server. And then obviously you can play the game, and you can, I don't know. Oh, it's got more. Look at that. It's got some more stuff. Oh, even more stuff. Inventory, loot drops. Hey, it's a big world. Yeah. So it's taken us 3 years so far. So, obviously I was here to talk about scope. We've clearly not done well on the scope front, really, with this last project. I think naturally I always wanted to make a game like this. I always wanted the freedom to build something where I could just let my imagination run wild. Let's Build a Zoo, like our publisher was like, James, why are you unhappy? It's done really well. I'm like, it's not good enough. I want to make something crazy. And obviously, I feel that we're really lucky. We've earned enough, I guess money is part of it, but we've earned enough money and respect, and our investor is kind enough to us to just leave us alone, where we can actually explore making something that allows me to finally get all of my creative, shit out of my system into one place, right? I've always wanted to make a game like this, as I said, but I never let myself do it, And I think naturally, a lot of us, when we go to make our first games, we start thinking like this. We want to make everything. And it's really bad to do that. I think you have to make loads and loads of things first to earn the right to do it. That's the last slide. Look at that. It's over. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't do a whole hour.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. James Barnard. Please give him a big round of applause again. Okay. Move on to our Q&A session. Are you okay with that? Okay, so we're going to start with our Q&A session. If anyone wants to ask Mr. James Barnard a question, you guys can raise your hand.
Hey, got questions. Do I go over and... Oh, no, you're doing it. Thanks. Oh, that's not very long.
Just a simple one. Just now when you showed us the games that you made, 27 games, one of it was called a campaign clicker. Was that did you made it during the election or something?
The old election when Trump was not going to win, the first time he tried and he wasn't going to win.
Yes, please tell us about that.
Okay,
game.
so I do like to make
a
games that have
democracy
some...
game.
Okay, there's a bit of a story. So number one is that we just made a game that didn't do very well. And my friend, he ran this Iron Horse or something, publishing mobile company. And he said, clickers, man, clickers. And I quite liked clickers. They were quite amusing for a very short period. So I decided to make a clicker, but I wanted to make a clicker that was interesting. And the election was coming up, and I personally had a political allegiance with one person and not the other. And I thought it'd be interesting to make a game where not only did we make something that hopefully made us piles of money, which it didn't, we also wanted to do something where people playing the game would learn a little bit. Because I think... I'd watched a documentary about a band I really like, and the guy was from America, and he went home to his family, and they're like, yeah, we like that guy. Oh, I'm giving away who it is. Anyway. And the family all had this opinion about the politician, but when the actual talk started on the TV and he came up, they all just went into the garden and drank beer. And I thought, wow, this is like, obviously this didn't work, but like I thought I want to make something, because our games were downloaded like millions of times. So that game was downloaded like 3 million times or something. I wanted to make something where people would actually connect with the politics, and maybe they weren't connecting with it another way, and they would read some of the ridiculous things. So we actually had his and her Twitter streams directly feeding into the game, so you could like see it live what they were saying, and then we recorded like 300, 400 quotes from each politician that you could see. So obviously I thought it was an interesting way to communicate that with people. And what would happen was, when you voted enough, you got enough votes, you won the election. And interestingly, I didn't know about the electoral college thing where it's like all weird. So we just had like winners and losers, and our game was really close to the final result. It was like very close, like within like 0.25%. And I was like, wow, look at that, we predicted the election. But yeah. But no, we didn't, because we didn't know about electoral college, so it went the other way. But yes, am I proud of that game now? No. I mean, if I get to tell the story of why it exists, I'm okay with it, but it's sort of a dark stain on history. I don't want anything to do with that thing in our history at this point, but yeah.
What do you think about games that are having advertisement on it for like not a story-based game, just like a normal go there, kill the enemy, get some weapon or something, and then upgrade. And then even when upgrade also, you want extra awards or something, we need to watch the advertisement. And have you ever thought of, when you in low income or anything, have you ever the thought of putting advertisement inside your game?
Do you work for an advertising company?
No.
I thought you might say yes and then come back with, well, I can tell you, I can solve your problem today. We did have advertising in a lot of our games. In fact, it may have been the Campaign Clicker where I posted something that horrified me. It was like we made, $400 or something in a day off the ads, right? But you could see the analytics of how many hours of adverts were watched to get that money. And it was something horrible, like, 27 years of human life had been spent watching those adverts for us to get $400, right? And people to get meaningless upgrades. And I'm sort of torn. Naturally, personally, obviously, I despise it. I think it lessens the game, and I think it's an awful abuse of the developer, because it's to take your players away into other games. I think it's an abuse of players' time. I think it's abuse of the world's resources, that we're spending all this power doing analytics and like pushing these crappy ads to people. I think it's got far worse, where it's like adverts for things that have no business being shown to kids are shown to kids. I mean, to me, it's a horrific thing, right? And I don't want to be anywhere near it. I think it's destroying respect of mobile games, making them even worse than they are. On the flip side, I understand that kids, as an example, don't have much money, and so for them playing a game, we talk about the money, the cash rich who can just buy stuff, and we talk about the time rich who are like kids who don't have much money, and they watch an ad and I get a thing. And I used to live in this kind of idealistic bubble where I thought it was okay because we're giving them a way to play a game that they otherwise wouldn't have, and isn't that nice? And they got a way of playing it. Now I think, screw that, they should just go on the Pirate Bay and download a game without ads. Sorry to say it, but yes, I think the advertising business should go die very quickly.
Thank you.
Hi, James Barnard.
Hi.
My name
Thomas Richardson. I don't know your name. I'm just making it up. See if I could get it back. Okay, sorry, carry on.
Okay. Where is your homeland?
The United Kingdom.
United Kingdom.
But I've lived in Singapore for 17 years, so it feels like that is my homeland now, thankfully. And it's better than my real homeland.
Okay, suppose you make a game where, in a setting where the Earth history was washed away, and you get to rebuild your country from clean slate. What kind of game are you going to make it, and what kind of core mechanic and culture are you going to make for the game?
That's an interesting question. Although I don't let myself think about the story beforehand, but the mechanic is quite interesting. I think, the game of life, it's like that algorithm where two things duplicate and become four and become whatever. I think I would make something based on that. And so it'd start with two people, and then I'd inject lots of different sort of tastes and variables into that. It's something you can do inside Let's Build a Dungeons game engine. But yes, and then I'd see what kind of variables that... So if you imagine that something, when it splits, it has a random chance of being it could be full of hatred or full of love. At the beginning, that weight becomes massive, and then it would obviously go through everything that happened from there on. It could be really interesting to see what simple changes early on in that society would bring about to it. That sounds fun. Thanks for the question.
Hello.
Hello.
So, I have a question about how to identify scope creep during the early stages of development of a game. So, say for example, you're working on a game, you're in early development, you're coming up with mechanics, coming up with the core game loop, and you're very much deep in the process. What are some red flags or immediate exclamation marks that you might be able to spot that tells you that you're scope creeping?
Can you give me an example game so that I could sort of talk about some genre or something? Or?
Let's say, for example, maybe a action game, say a single player action adventure.
Okay. That's a really hard genre to make, because an action adventure, if we take something like Uncharted, it's got millions of mechanics in it and it goes wild and it's super cinematic, right? Uncharted obviously is an example of infinite money, infinite time, infinite everything, right? So infinite people, everything. So when they decide they want to make a level of you driving on that level in Uncharted 3 where you're driving on the back of the Jeep, that must have cost $60 million or something. It's incredible. It never stops. Before that, every single one of those games was just on a loop, I think it's important, depending on, we go back to, it's also the triangle, right? What is the amount of things that can be done with the mechanic you're working on? How much is it going to bring to the player? So before making Let's Build a Dungeon, this sounds a bit weird. Please put up with my weirdness. I was lying in a swimming pool and I had my eyes shut and I tried to imagine playing the game. And I tried to sort of go through it in my mind palace. And then I explored what I could do with each mechanic, visually, and what mattered. And it was a really big struggle, because obviously it's a bit of a weird game. And there were some bits where I was like, this doesn't have enough value to the player. In the end, because we're stupid, we're doing those bits. But, take a grapple, right? Obviously, a grapple is a great mechanic. You can do so much with a grapple. It's pull things, pull yourself, swing to special places. It's a really, really good thing to use. But, go and play noughts and crosses with some old man while you have a conversation about the meaning of life has not got much value, right? And I think a lot of the time, I go back to narrative. If you're doing something because of the narrative, try to find a different way to do that uses actual core mechanics. We have a mechanic in our game where you go around and scan areas. I hate that mechanic. It was one of those stupid things. I'm I just want to do it. And it's so useless. It's just used for one thing and it's really rubbish and it's such a bad mechanic. So how flexible is it? And, and how much fun is it? And equally, if you start making it and it just isn't fun and you can't make anything with it, you've got to throw it away pretty quickly. I can't remember what mechanic. There was another mechanic I came up with, which I can't remember what it is. And I would do that thing after I've got it. I'm this is perfect. This is such a great thing. And then I'd be but how many other ways can I use it? And I'd do that thought experiment before even writing the first line of code. And I could only use it that one way. And I loved that way, but I had to throw it from the game. I don't know if that's really answering your question, but that's sort of the design document. And when I was doing one of the last games I made at Lucasfilm, what I did was I tried to break the mechanics and the levels and everything into tiers. So I had this core game where you could do 6 things and there were 7 levels. And then I had another game built around it that expanded the story. The droids would go off and do whatever. And then they had these other mechanics. And if we had time, we could make that extra layer and make the game more interesting. It means you have to do more design work. But design work's the cheapest thing to do, right? So, that's I'm trying to do that right now with Dungeon so that we can finish a thing. Like, what can I cut away and actually make the game ship, you know? Okay. I think we have 5 minutes, maybe 2 more.
So what would be the best advice you would give to the younger self?
To my younger self, get out! Don't do it! Probably. Don't eat that other bag of chips, you get fat! Yeah, that one. No, I think it's a bit weird. Like, I think I was a bit of a dick as a kid. If you look at my history, I was like a producer and a lead designer within no time in the career, right? And I really thought I knew everything. And I think I got that job horribly by doing the I know best in the kind of meeting rooms when I didn't know best. And then nobody else had the courage to stand up and say they knew best. And then I just got the job. And so I was really lucky because I got to learn so much through it. But yeah, and it's hard to go back and say don't be a dick because I actually got something out of being a dick. But you know, but like, I think I should have had the courage to probably leave earlier and start my own thing. It was only because I got fired that it happened, you know. And I think it's been really rewarding to do that. But I also think I shouldn't have left that much earlier. As you can see from the slides, I feel I learned so much from those companies. So yeah, I don't really have any major advice. Sorry. But buy some more Vectrexes and sell them later or whatever cool console that now I can't afford. I think one more. There you go.
In a scenario where a scope becomes like a studio specialty, do you think that that is a good thing, or would you feel like you would be stuck in one identity and would not be able to get out of that scope?
Do you mean a genre, or you mean like the idea that the studio always makes massive games?
Like, let's say like a game like From Software will always make an Elden Ring game or a Dark Souls game, something similar to that, or like a Just Cause game.
I think there's 2 different questions maybe that you're asking. Genre-wise, like I think it's really good. Like now we make simulation games. We will never not make simulation games, but I really love making them. And we get better at them with every single one we make. And I think From Software have got better with every game they've made. So and the fans follow them, which is quite rare in games to get fans. And you know, you look at Naughty Dog and they do cinematic games now. Who knows what they'll do next? But you know, they've definitely built a special niche for themselves. And you build a team who have expertise around it. And I think no one should jump mechanic, you know, unless you're really early on and you're just trying different things. You should stay with the same mechanic. As for like studios that have big scope, I think, you know, Larian is an example of a studio whose games are massive and everyone would expect massive games. One of the things I didn't cover in my talk is about the reason that I still use code that is from my first game in this game is because we're trying to build a tool set that is really optimized. We don't use Unity because in Unity, when you type a line of code, it takes like 3 minutes to re-import it. And it's hell on earth, and that kills you. So we use just Visual Studio with C#, where we can hit pause, write the code, press play again, and the game carries on from where it left off. That kind of just-in-time compiler thing means that we can iterate really fast. So I think if you're going to make a game with big scope, your tool chain, how quickly you can get your stuff on the screen, you cannot underestimate how valuable that is. And for our studio, being able to build quickly is the only reason we can do such stupid stuff. So there you go, yeah. Thank you. I think that's the end. Yes, there is less than 30 seconds left. Thank you very much.